Alrighty, these slides, before we start, these slides are kind of wordy, so I'm going to try and pick out the pieces that are actually attached to the note guide. So that just means maybe don't start writing immediately, just all of the words that are on the slide, because I'm going to direct you to the most important ones. Alrighty, so housing is going to be the largest expense when we go through our budget. We saw that on our taxes and budgeting unit, that housing was the biggest piece of our expenses. It's going to be about 1/3 of our income. So 1/3 of our monthly income is going to be our housing, whether that be rent or mortgage. And just like everything else that we've gone through in personal finance, our housing choices are going to be based on our goals, our values, our needs, and our wants. That was our very first unit where we talked about SMART goals. We talked about values, needs, and wants. And since then, pretty much everything has come back and connected to those. And then, as you know, there are a wide variety of places that you can live. Some examples: you could own or rent a home. You could own or rent an apartment. Own or rent a condo. Mobile home, townhome. Duplex. There are a wide variety of options when you're choosing where to live. And when we are going through all of these different options and we're considering our goals, our wants, our needs, our values, we have to use those as some reasons to make our housing choice. So we need to think, obviously, about our financial goals. Am I trying to reach a certain point in a savings account, or am I trying to invest a certain amount of money? Because housing is our biggest expense, that is going to be a huge factor in where we choose to live. Do I want to spend more every month and live in a luxury apartment? Or do I want to save money in order to try and reach some other type of financial goal? And then that, I think, fifth bullet down, credit history. That is a huge reason for making our housing choices. Because like we talked about in some of our other note guides, our credit history is going to affect other areas of our life that aren't just related to credit cards or necessarily related to loans. So if I go and I try to get a home loan, or I try to rent a house or an apartment, they're going to check my credit history. They're going to look at my credit score, and they could easily deny me from renting this apartment because my credit score is too low. Or they could deny me the home loan that I want because my credit score is too low. So our borrowing history does have an impact on several areas of our lives. And we have 4 main costs that come along with renting. Specifically, we're going to look at both renting and owning. So if we're thinking about renting, which is not a type of credit, just so we are aware, renting is not credit, we would be paying a monthly rent. When you first sign that contract, you're going to be paying a security deposit. And we'll define some of these terms in a couple slides. We're also going to be paying utilities being paying for electricity so that you can have lights on, paying for water. A lot of times you have to pay for, especially if you're renting, you have to pay for maybe garbage, so your trash collection. You might have to pay for gas if you have heating. And then we also are going to have to pay some type of insurance. So we'll have renter's insurance. Those are our 4 main costs that are just associated with our living expenses when we are renting. I'll give just another couple seconds before we move on to our defining some of these terms. Alrighty, and these are the slides that have a lot of words on them. You do not have to write down everything that's on here. But our first term when we think about renting is going to be a lease. And the lease is that contract between me as the renter and a landlord who is renting me this home. So a lease is just going to be that contract telling who's responsible for what. What am I responsible for as the renter? What is the other person responsible for as the person renting out this home? The person who is renting out the home, they are going to be the landlord. So they are the owner of this rental property. Depending on the type of home that you would be renting, you might be dealing with the landlord directly, so with the person who actually owns the rental property, or you might be dealing with a property manager, just being a kind of an employee of the landlord who is going to be in charge of interacting with the renters. So we have a lease, is that contract. A landlord is the person who owns the rental property. We have what we call a tenant, and that's going to be us, the person who actually rents that home. If you are the renter, you are called a tenant. The two main reasons that people choose to rent is that they either don't want to own a home. A lot of people who don't plan on staying in one city for more than a couple years, maybe they like to move around, see new places. There's no benefit to owning a home if you plan on moving in a year or 2 years. Or maybe you just can't afford to own a home. Maybe your credit score or your credit history isn't the best, so you can't get approved for a home loan. Therefore, you choose to rent long term. We talked about rent being one of the 4 expenses for monthly that come along monthly. Rent just being the cost of using that other person's property. That is the money that I am paying out as the tenant to live in this space. And then we also talked about a security deposit. And a security deposit is going to be an amount of money that you have to pay before you get to move into this home. Usually it's going to be 1 to 2 months worth of rent. So if my rent is $500 a month, I may be asked to pay $500 as a security deposit, or $1,000 as a security deposit. And a security deposit just means that I'm paying some money up front in case I damage this home in any way. So maybe I spill a bunch of stuff on the carpet, it's not going to come up. They have some money to help replace that. If my lease is up, I signed a contract saying I would live there for 1 year. It's been a year. The house is in perfect condition. I didn't mess up anything. They're going to give me that security deposit back. So as long as you're responsible, as long as you don't harm the home in any way or in any major way, you will probably get some, if not all, of your security deposit back. So making sure that you're responsible will give you some extra cash at the end. Some advantages of renting versus owning. Advantages would be that it is a little bit less expensive. And sometimes there are fixed monthly expenses. The fixed monthly expenses kind of vary depending on where you want to rent. Do not feel like you need to write down all of these if you just want to pick a couple of them. I'm just going to talk about the ones I think are most important. As a renter, you have fewer responsibilities. So if something breaks in your apartment or in the home you're renting, you don't have to pay to fix it. You just tell your landlord that it's broken, and then they will come and repair it for you. That is a huge, huge advantage of renting, is that you don't have to go through and make those repairs. You don't have to be financially responsible for making those repairs. And then a lot of times, especially when we're younger, we're looking at some of the extra things that might come along with renting. If I move into an apartment complex, I may see that I get a pool, that I get a gym, that I get things like that that go along with my rent. Whereas if I bought a home, I'm only going to have the home. So depending on where you are in your life, what your goals are, what your values are, may change some of these advantages of renting. I'll leave this up for just a couple seconds because I see some people still writing. And then the flip side of this is the disadvantages of renting. One of the disadvantages is that you're going to have a lot less privacy because you do have neighbors that are going to be moving around frequently. Like I said, you might sign a lease for 1 year to live in this home. That means that your neighbor also signed a lease for 1 year. Depending on the type of establishment that you're living in, maybe you're sharing walls with your neighbors. This disadvantages part, and I'll have the video presentation up by like 4 hours. No problem. So just like we had several advantages, we have several disadvantages. I pulled out some of the important ones that I find to be the most important. Feel free to pull out the ones that you find to be the most important. You do have a lot less flexibility when you are renting. You don't get to paint the walls. You don't get to update the carpet or the flooring. You're kind of tied to what the place looks like currently. I'll again leave this up for just a little bit longer for those that are still writing before we move on to home ownership. Alrighty, so home ownership. This is going to be a type of credit because typically home ownership is going to come along with a loan. And the loan is called a mortgage. So when we think about the costs of ownership, we have our mortgage payment, so our loan payment to own this home. A lot of times we are going to have to pay a down payment. Pretty much all the time we will have to pay a down payment. This means this is kind of like that security deposit in the sense that we pay it one time up front in order to purchase this home. We also have another one-time cost at the beginning called closing costs. This goes along with closing out that contract when we are purchasing a house from somebody else. And then the last 4 are going to be our monthly or periodic costs. Just like when we're renting, we're going to have to pay our utilities. We need to keep our electricity on. We need to keep our water on. We need to keep our gas on. Just like renting, we have insurance, but this time it's going to be homeowners insurance rather than renters insurance. And then we add 2 more expenses that we have to pay occasionally. Because we own our home now, we're not renting, we have some taxes that go along with that. So we're going to be paying extra taxes for owning our home. And then we have those maintenance. So if something breaks, something goes wrong, Because you're the owner, you are now responsible for paying for that, fixing it yourself. You can't call a landlord and ask for help because you are the landlord. So we have quite a few more costs that come along with home ownership versus renting. And again, there's a lot of words on this slide, so I'm going to walk you through what we want to be putting down. Home ownership as that first term just means that you are going to be the one buying a home, having it as a piece of property. Home ownership is one of the main goals for a lot of people, especially people who have rented for an extended period of time. They want to become a homeowner. And we know that home owning is a type of credit because we're getting a loan called the mortgage. And it's also going to be a form of investment. We talked about real estate in our investing unit. So owning a home is an investment because we could grow the value of our home and hope to sell it for more than what we paid. We talked about last unit, that's called the capital gain. Anytime we sell something for more than what we paid for it, it's a type of investment. This is what we call equity when we think about home ownership. I'm putting money into this home, I'm increasing the value. Because it is an investment, I want to sell it in the future for more than what I paid for it. Mortgage is that loan that we would get in order to purchase a home. It is a line of credit. It's not a line of credit, but it's a credit loan that we would have. Almost everyone who buys a home does take out a mortgage loan. 90% of people are going to have a mortgage. And along with this, we have what we call collateral. So collateral is going to be something that I promise to give the lender if I stop paying on my loan. In a mortgage situation, this is going to be the home itself. So if I stop paying my monthly mortgage payments, they can come and they can take my home back. I'm not paying for the item that I purchased, so now they get it back. And then we also talked about the term down payment with our monthly or our overall expenses of home ownership. And how a down payment is a one-time cost going to be made at the time that I purchase this home, just like the security deposit was a one-time cost whenever I decide to rent. But this is going to be a much larger amount. A down payment is going to be around 10 to 20% of the price of the home. So a lot of times this is going to be $10,000, $20,000 that you are paying, whereas the example I used for the security deposit was maybe $500, maybe $1,000. Much, much less. But you actually own this home now. You are not borrowing it from somebody else. Alrighty, and then just like with home or with renting, we want to go through some advantages and some disadvantages. Again, do not feel like you have to write all of these down. I'm going to pick out some of the most important ones that I find are the most important, especially related to personal finance. One advantage is that you are going to have stable mortgage payments, so they're going to be fixed. We know that since this is installment credit, a loan is installment credit, we are going to have the same amount that we pay every single month, which helps you budget. you are going to have a lot more freedom and a lot more privacy because you have the ability to change your home how you like. You are the homeowner, so you can paint the walls, you can change the flooring, you can remodel your home. You can have whatever pets you'd like. You can have however many people you want in your home. Those are all things that might be in a renting contract that prevent you from doing what you would like. And then again, we're going to be building our equity. So we are investing in this home. We are putting money into it in order to increase its value. Alrighty, and then our disadvantages. You have that really large down payment cost. Like I said, a lot of people don't own a home because they can't afford to. A lot of people don't have $10,000 or $20,000 in their bank account that they can use as a down payment. Home ownership, homeowner's insurance is a lot more expensive than renter's insurance. So you are going to have higher insurance costs. You are going to be in charge for any of those repairs, any of the maintenance, any of the costs that come along with fixing something in your home. And then when we talked about equity, we are trying to increase the value of our home. But like any investment, it's risky. There is potential that while your goal is to increase the value of your home, the value is actually decreasing. Maybe your home is not going to be worth as much as it was when you purchased it. That is the main disadvantage of home ownership. Alrighty, and then just kind of a summary. No matter whether you are choosing to rent or you are choosing home ownership, you're going to be paying no matter what. So do you want to pay a landlord to rent, or do you want to be paying yourself to live in a home that you own? That's what we're going to wrap up with renting versus owning. We do not spend a lot of time talking about these two types of credit. Home loans, mortgages, or auto loans. I am going to pull up our assignment. We have almost 15 minutes, so I would guess that most people can get almost all of the way through it, if not completely finished with it. It'll be open on Canvas in just a couple minutes. So like I said, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about mortgages or this type of credit, but I do want you to consider it a little bit. So we're going to go through this assignment called Becoming a Homeowner, and I want you to start thinking about the places that you would want to live in your future. It asks you to use your personal spending plan from Unit 2. I do not anticipate that any of you kept your personal spending plan from Unit 2. Not a big deal. But try to think back to the potential career that you wanted to work. In Unit 1 and Unit 2, we talked about the career you might want for your future. So try to think about what that salary was. Maybe Google it and figure out what that salary was. And feel free to use that as the base for a home that you can afford. This is only 4 questions. So you are going to figure out how much you can afford to spend on a home. We know that home ownership is 1/3 of our income. So how much income do you think you will have? Based on that, how much can you afford to spend on a home? Then I have 2 websites that you could use. There are others as well. These are just two easy ones. I want you to find a home that is within that price range that you would actually realistically want to live in. Calculate what your down payment would need to be. We're going to think about a 10% down payment. So once you have found a home, what down payment do you need? And then I want you to put together and write a SMART goal. Think back to Unit 1. What is a SMART goal? If you can't remember what a SMART goal is, maybe touch back on our video presentation or raise your hand and ask me, because I am more than happy to help you. But like I said, this is a really short assignment. I would guess that most people can finish it before class ends.